The Spyro Reignited Trilogy. On November 13th, 2018, the world was graced with this retro gem. This title brought people back to a golden age of gaming, when games were made to be fun, and not designed to steal your money at every turn. Okay, it does do that, but at least it's not real money. The point is, this game was a breath of fresh air. Toys for Bob spent countless hours painstakingly remaking Spyro, putting passionate and delicate care into remastering Spyro for the next generation. Toys for Bob has created what many believe to be the perfect remaster, wonderfully blending new age graphics with retro gameplay. At least for the first game. Then they kinda ran out of time. If for some reason you haven't played the Reignited Trilogy, let me fill you in on the plot. Spyro the Dragon. Big bad guy named Nasty Nork gets called ugly, turns all the dragons to stone, Spyro saves them, defeats the bad guy, collects all the treasure. Good game, we're out of here, goodbye. Moving on to Spyro 2, Gateway to Glimmer, Spyro 2, RIPTO's Rage, Spyro 2, Electric Boot. You know what? Forget it. Spyro tries to go on a vacation, but ends up in Glimmer, where this angry orange dude named RIPTO is trying to take over. Spyro meets this girl, Elora, who is definitely not a goat, this idiot Hunter, and this. I mean, just look at him. What do you want me to say? Anyway, these guys basically force Spyro to help him because they won't let him go home till he does. You know, I really see why these characters are so beloved now. Nonetheless, Spyro goes to all the realms, collects all the MacGuffins, beats the bad guy, and gets all the treasure. Spyro 3, Year of the Dragon. All the dragon's eggs are stolen by an evil sorceress, and the only one who can stop her is someone who can fit through a conveniently Spyro-sized hole. So you and... oh god. Oh no, they brought Hunter back, why? Regardless, you and Hunter go into the hole and into the Forgotten Realms. Spyro saves all the eggs, beats the bad guy, and of course, collects all the treasure. There's also new characters, a romantic subplot, and tons of baby dragons who have now imprinted hard on Spyro. You know, maybe we should have told him before he let 150 baby dragons hatch in front of him. Oh well. Alright, so now that you're basically a Spyro expert, let's move on. Now, these games are all about exploring, finding collectibles, completing the occasional challenge, and feeding Spyro's crippling addiction to gems. Like, seriously, it's not healthy. Spyro? Spyro, you okay? Need some help? I think he's just accepted it. Oh yeah, and this game has bosses too. Before we begin, just remember that this is my opinion. If you don't agree with me, that's fine. You're wrong, but that's fine. In all seriousness, I'd love to hear your opinions on the best and worst bosses in the series, so leave them in the comments. Alright, and without further ado, we've got some bosses to rank. Number 22, Twin Dragons. Coming in a distant last place is this absolute atrocity of a boss fight. This fight pins you up against two so-called dragons that look like those big multi-person costumes you see at Chinese festivals. Who's hiding under there? Probably someone like this. Oh my god, Spyro, what did they do to you? I'm sorry. And as for the fight itself, it is pure agony. It is easily the hardest boss in the trilogy, and not for any good reasons. The bosses constantly fly around the arena, twisting and turning every which way, with no discernible pattern, making hitting them incredibly annoying. Not only that, but the dragons get shorter with every hit they take, until they're only a head, making the last few hits nearly impossible. Just to pour a little extra salt on the wound, the dragons even regenerate health over time. And if you ever, and I mean ever, are in the line of sight of either of the dragons, they will shoot a fireball at you. And you can't turn very fast while flying, so most of the time dodging this is basically impossible. There is no good way to handle this boss. Just fly around, spamming fireballs, praying to God that the dragons don't decide to just randomly do a 180 and shoot you in the face. There are absolutely no redeeming qualities about this boss. I'd say it's the second worst thing about this trilogy next to the flossing skeleton. But hey, we've only got up to go from here, right? Number 21, the Sorceress. Second fight. Imagine, you've played 3 games as the Purple Dragon, and have overcome every challenge thrown at you. You've collected 150 eggs, and 20,002 gems somehow because this game is broken, and now only one more challenge awaits you. The Sorceress has come back from the dead, because falling into lava in this game is apparently like being thrown off a cliff in Tekken. An ultimate final battle against the Sorceress to cap off the trilogy. It's gonna be epic. No, actually it sucks. I don't know what happened here. I know Spyro 3 was rushed, so they probably ran out of time, but it still baffles me how this absolutely nothing boss ended up as the finale to their game. All this boss does is casually fly around the outside of the arena. She'll occasionally remember that there's a fight going on and turn to shoot an easily dodgeable projectile at you. Other than that, nothing. Just blast away for a while until you put her out of her misery. After that, you get a short cutscene where Spyro returns to the dragon world, you get some baby dragon antics, and a burp joke. And that's it. A burp joke. A truly anticlimactic end to a great game, earning itself a spot at the bottom of this list. Number 20, Nasty Gnorc. Sorry, Gnasty Gnorc. In the same vein as the Sorceress, Nasty Gnorc is a pretty anticlimactic boss in his game respectively as well. The entire game, defeating Nasty is your ultimate goal. He's hyped up as this powerful foe who is stronger than anything you've faced in the game up to that point. Then you get to him and all he does is run away. Seriously, you spend the entire fight chasing after him. So much for a big bad guy. Pathetic. Man, we're only 3 bosses in, and already 2 of the final bosses have come up. Is this series doomed to not have any great final bosses? Number 19, these dogs. Oh yeah, and Toasty's here too. Toasty is about as nothing of a boss as you can get in this game. The only thing that remotely poses a challenge are the dogs. It's really sad that the common enemies in the arena put up a bigger fight than the actual boss. I'm sure this is by design since he's the first boss in the game, but that doesn't excuse the fact that he does literally nothing. I honestly don't know what else to say about this boss, there's so little to it, so let's move on. Number 18, BLOWHARD. Oh, here we go, another Spyro 1 boss. You might notice a pattern with the first game's bosses. Let's see. You run through the level, hit the boss, he runs, you run after him, run past some wizards, run across the moving platforms, run up to the boss, hit him again, he runs, you run after him, run across the gap, run some more for good measure, and then finally get to the boss and deliver the final blow. Now, the more clever of you may have noticed the trend, but don't feel bad if you didn't. If there is any good thing about this boss, at least his name gave a bunch of 12-year-olds a good laugh. Duh, but not me, of course. I am much too mature for that. That's really the only thing that puts him above Toasty, honestly. Number 17, Jacuse. Okay, this boss is literally just BLOWHARD, but he has a projectile attack, making him marginally more interesting. Seriously, what more do you want from me? Also, I know his name is Jacques, I just wanted to annoy people. Number 16, Dr. SHEMP. Man, we are on a roll with these Spyro 1 bosses. When remastering these bosses, the developers didn't really have much to work with from the original game, but Dr. SHEMP is a boss that seems like he really had a lot of love poured into him. They really went all out with his animations, and they're really fun. Gameplay-wise, this boss actually has his own gimmick, unlike the previous Spyro 1 bosses. The fact that he's armored in the front means there's at least a sliver of strategy that goes into taking this guy on. Better than just run up, flame like the previous bosses. Don't get me wrong, this boss is far from good, but he's definitely a cut above the others. I give it a Golden Participation Award. Congratulations. You tried. Number 15, Sleepyhead. Finally breaking our streak of Spyro 1 bosses, we have a boss so simple I'm convinced it was unfinished. Spyro 3 put a lot more work into its bosses than the first game, and you'll see the fruits of that soon enough, but this boss showcases none of that. You'd think that with him being a wizard that he'd have a bunch of interesting magic-based attacks to fight you with, but no, we get none of that. He literally has 2 attacks, one where he spawns easily killable crocodile enemies, and a bomb attack that only exists for you to hit back at him. Use some magic or something, come on, this is boring! At least this boss lives up to his name. He really will put you to sleep. Number 14, BLUTO. From a design standpoint, BLUTO isn't actually all that bad. It's your ship versus his submarine. The battle balances fight and flight pretty well. You have to stay away from him while collecting ammo crates before he does, but you also have to find time to turn and hit him as well. Now, this sounds like a pretty decent boss, right? Well, yeah, except for one fatal flaw that pretty much ruins the whole thing. Here, come close, let me tell you it. Closer. Come on, closer. The controls suck! Seriously, steering Spyro's ship is an absolute mess. Staying away from BLUTO becomes a chore when your ship doesn't go the way you want it, no matter which way you point the analog stick. I'd like to praise this boss some, but I just ran into a wall for the 26th time and forgot what positive thing I was going to say. Number 13, the Ox. Alright, we have our first Spyro 2 boss. So, what comes to mind when you think of a boss fight against an ox? A giant round animal pelting you with bombs in a frozen area surrounded by a city of super advanced sentient robots? Yeah, me too. Aside from the ridiculous concept of it all, the Ox is a pretty solid boss fight. It plays more like a minigame, with the boss throwing bombs that bounce all over the place and that you have to hit back at him. This would actually be really fun with 4 players going against each other, like a Mario Party minigame. Make it a thing, Toys for Bob. I expect to see Bomb Wars in the DLC. What I really don't understand is why it's an ox. It's not like they can't make anything throw a bomb. Why not something that makes more sense with the level? They could have at least made it a robot box. Number 12, Metalhead. And the award for the best boss in the first Spyro game goes to Metalhead. Congratulations, you beat all the sucky bosses. This boss is about as close as we get to actual boss mechanics in the first game. You can't damage this boss directly, and instead have to destroy the various power pylons in the room to cut off his power supply. Because, you know, electricity and currents and all that stuff. Pretty sure it works the same way in real life. In any case, this guy is far better than anything else you encounter in the first game, and is the clear-cut winner for the best Spyro 1 boss. Number 11, Crawdad King. I'm just going to put all the Sparks bosses next to each other because they're so similar. Crawdad King is an incredibly easy boss. Just stay away to react to his attacks, lock sparks in his direction, and fire away. If you have any experience with top-down shooters, you can probably beat this boss with your eyes closed. Number 10, Manta Ray. The Manta Ray is much more active than the Crawdad King, swimming all around the arena. This keeps you on your toes a lot more than the previous boss. It also shoots projectiles, but these never seem to come anywhere close to hitting me. Shoot it for a while and then suddenly it splits in two. Oh man, things are about to get real and... it's dead already. Ah well, it was fun while it lasted. Number 9, Spider King. Spider King is probably the most difficult of the Sparks bosses, since the window to attack him is so small. This guy's only vulnerable when he stops to shoot mini spider enemies at you. What a brave and noble king, sending his troops in to die instead of taking you on himself. The rest of the time he spends spinning around the arena completely invulnerable like an absolute madman. This does make the fight much longer than the others, and more intense as a result, but since the boss doesn't have a second phase, or add any sort of new attacks to its repertoire during the battle, it can start to feel a little repetitive after a while. Number 8, METALHEAD. Now here's a boss that's thematically appropriate for a futuristic setting. Looking at you, Meta-Ox. This mechanical bug scurries around the arena very unpredictably, shooting at you if you ever get in front of it, and suddenly I'm getting weird feelings of deja vu. After a while, the boss splits in two, and I'm seriously getting flashbacks to the Twin Dragons. I was honestly going to put this boss below the other Sparks bosses just for reminding me of... that. But after fighting this boss again, I realized this is really what the Twin Dragons should have been. The boss and its projectiles move slow enough that you have plenty of time to react to them, and when you get hit, it never feels like it wasn't your fault. If anything, its similarities only make it seem better, because you really notice how much better the mechanics are implemented into this boss fight. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go dip my brain in acid so I can forget the Twin Dragons ever existed. Number 7, Spike. Now, Spike isn't a bad boss. I actually think all the bosses from this point on are good fights. There's just something about Spike that brings him down below the best bosses in this series. The word that comes to mind is forgettable. The boss fight is all about grabbing various items dropped on the battlefield and using them against Spike before he grabs them and does the same to you. A cool concept and all, but there are 2 other bosses high up on this list that utilize the same mechanic, and utilize them much better. I think that's ultimately what made this boss such a forgettable experience for me. They also kinda messed up his design in this game. In the original game, he looked super intimidating, but they went with a cuter design for this game, making him seem like a much less formidable foe. Not a bad boss by any means, just incredibly underwhelming. Number 6, the Sorceress. First fight. For a lot of people, this is the best boss in the series, so many of you might be surprised to see it lower on the list like this, but hear me out. Being the main antagonist, the Sorceress has a lot to live up to. Luckily, this boss actually lives up to the hype pretty well. However, she is still far from the best boss in the series. Her fight is very lacking from a difficulty standpoint. The boss does a lot of standing still and glancing around for some reason, and when she does attack you, her attack is clearly given away by the color of her wand. It doesn't really matter though, since all of her attacks can be avoided just by running in one direction. None of this is that bad so far, but the real garbage comes from the way you actually damage the boss. She can't be hit with normal attacks, and so you have to use various vehicles to damage her. The cannon is fine in a normal setting, but in a combat situation like this, being stuck in a stationary cannon is very awkward. The moving tank is pretty good and I actually kinda like it, but the flying ship, oh no. Same idea with the boat in the BLUTO fight. Controlling this thing is super difficult when the camera is always centered on the boss. These controls really bog down the experience, and are the main reason this didn't get a higher spot. Number 5, Buzz. Buzz really got the short end of the stick in this remaster, getting a way more intense design change than Spike. However, this boss makes up for that with its much more interesting and original mechanics. Baiting Buzz to the edge of the arena without getting knocked off yourself requires a good amount of strategizing, without being too difficult for a first boss. However, his second and especially third phase becomes significantly easier and way less interesting, preventing this boss from getting a higher spot. But this is still certainly an above average fight. Number 4, Crush. I gotta say, Spyro 2 doesn't have a lot of bosses, but the ones it does have are pretty great, supported by the fact that they absolutely dominate the top part of this list. Unlike the bosses from the third game, who are just created by the sorceress in one scene and then are immediately fought afterwards, Crush and Gulp appear throughout the game alongside RIPTO, giving these fights a lot more build-up, and as such, they are much more meaningful fights than the throwaway characters we see in the sequel. While Crush is not at all a difficult boss, and his fight is fairly simple, it is a ton of fun. And that's really all you can ask for in a boss fight, isn't it? I have to say though, Crush is really, really stupid. I mean, you'd think he'd realize that rocks fall on his head every time he hits the ground with his club after like, you know, the first 6 times. But hey, game's got a game, so I guess I can let it slide. Number 3, Scorch. Now here's what I call an intimidating boss. In the cutscene beforehand, the sorceress creates this guy to be as powerful as possible in a last-ditch effort to stop you from reaching her lair. The boss looks like it came straight out of hell with its menacing glowing eyes and sharp teeth. This boss even summons Buzz, a previous boss in the game, as a mere henchman to fight you with. That's how powerful he is. Seriously, I never got this far in the game as a kid, but this would have scared the crap out of me. Mechanically, this boss really shines too. All of the boss's attacks are fair. You can clearly see where the fire is going to land from the shadows. The crabs actually pose a threat without being a nuisance, since you have to watch out for them and Scorch's incoming attacks at the same time. Being able to shoot rockets at the boss is pretty cool too. Where did Bentley get all this ammo? Like, can I take some with me after this? Cause I can think of a lot of other places in the game where that would be super helpful. Whatever. Point is, this is a great boss, and very fitting of the number 3 spot. A number of things were changed in the Reignited Trilogy that people weren't huge fans of. One of the things I hear about most often is the voice acting. Personally, I never really had a problem with it. Most of the time, anyway.
Ow! I went boom again.
Sorry, what was that?
Went boom again.
What?
Went boom again.
Huh?
Went boom again.
One more time?
Went boom again.
Admittedly, I don't remember the voice acting very well from playing this as a kid, so I don't have much nostalgia for it. So I guess I can see why a lot of people are bothered by this. I am, however, a big fan of some of the other changes they made to this game. One of those things is Gulp. They made Gulp way harder in this game with his tracking shots, which I love. It's so much better than the original, where you could just run in circles the entire time and avoid all his attacks. Now he's probably the hardest main boss in the series, and that's great. I already talked about how he and Crush have way more development to their characters than the other non-main antagonist villains, and Gulp's difficulty complements this so well. Everything about this boss is great. Rushing to hit him with the barrels and bombs before he eats them is intense but fair. You can still get double hits on Gulp with the rockets. I'm really glad they left that in. Just think, if every boss in the trilogy got the same treatment as Gulp, we'd be looking at a trilogy of near perfection right now. Who could possibly top a boss like this? Although, you probably already know since there's only one boss left, but look, I'm trying to be dramatic here, roll with me. You know what? Just fade to black. Remember near the beginning of this list when I questioned if this trilogy was doomed to not have any good final bosses? Well, the answer is no, because RIPTO is the best boss in the series. I mean, where do I even begin? RIPTO is such a great character. Just the way he says should be enough to tell you that. You finally open the door to the room Ripto's locked himself in, and are ready for an epic battle. Not really sure why Ripto's locked himself in there, or how he expects to take over while locked in the room, but honestly, it's unimportant. Right from the start, this boss is awesome. The whole mechanic of desperately racing to grab the orbs before RIPTO is one of the most iconic things from this game. It takes some work, but you finally manage to defeat RIPTO. You think, huh, that was pretty cool, pretty good end to the game. But the game's all like, oh, you thought we only do one-phase boss fights? Think again, because RIPTO gets up and summons a giant robot version of Gulp. Now you have to face off against this robo-riding RIPTO thing, which is... honestly, this phase is pretty underwhelming. But the third phase! What, you thought 2 phases was it? That's not how we do things around here, baby, because the arena starts falling apart, and then RIPTO takes his scepter, and with the power of the orbs makes a giant robot bird, and then Spyro takes a gem and gets all powered up, and come on, like, this didn't blow your mind as a kid. Because now we have this crazy flying part the sorceress wishes she could be like, and you get to fly and shoot fireballs at the same time, until you finally finish him off, sending him to a fiery death. Yeah, so it's a pretty good boss. And hey, at least they killed him off before he could be brought back in the crappy sequels and have his character ruined, am I right? What's that? They did that anyway? No. Thanks for watching, everyone. Hope you enjoyed. Make sure to like the video and subscribe if you did. I hope to do some more stuff like this in the future. My next boss ranking is going to be about a certain orange mascot you might have heard of before. That's right, Bubsy the cat.